Welcome to Hey Listen, where we discuss faith, leadership, and the mission of the church. We're so glad you've joined us. Now to today's episode. All right, so as we wrap up this conversation of technology, I have a question. Can technology help in discipleship?
Absolutely. The resources that we can tap into online, even AI, I am amazed at how accurate sometimes. If I ask a question, it's usually a very sound answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
I saw something the other day that said people are now using AI over Google just to ask basic questions. And I thought that was interesting. I think we'll just continue to see that shift.
I think the reason why is just like with the images we were talking about earlier, it used to be really plastic. Like a Google search would give you billions of hits, and most of it was irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. And you have to keep clicking to get those answers.
That's right. And here it just takes all that information and it sounds very human. Mm-hmm. And I know that it could be a very devastating technology, but right now I'm seeing things that give me some hope that it could be helpful. But if I can step back from this AI, which is a relatively recent phenomenon, it's just now getting to a point where it's incredibly good. Mm-hmm. But even Bible software like Logos, I use in my research. I can use that. I don't need the language tools I used to have in hard copy because that's all right there. The Bible app is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. You can use that. You can have it. It can give you alerts and things of that nature. I do really believe that technology could be a boon to discipleship, and some churches are using it very clever ways. We have an app, and we use that app to build community. It's a brand new thing for us. We've tried something new here. It's not that we haven't had one in the past, but we're trying something that's different with a different format. I mean, people can actually kind of prepare for church even by using the app.
Yep.
I think that's a great use of technology, and we've updated all of our databases and everything so that we can use it as a staff, so that we're more organized. We're able to coordinate better. So, absolutely, yes. But we need to also, here we go again. We have to talk about these darker things. One of the things that I'm seeing with smartphones, and if we draw back again a little bit and we look at how used to be the case that if you were on a date with your girlfriend, so I'm thinking back 100 years ago when Jenny and I were dating, there would have been any weekend we could have went to the movies and watched a different movie and probably been pretty excited to see it. Mm-hmm. Now, my wife and I will talk about going out on a date to a movie, and there are reruns, and there might be one or two movies. Like Hollywood's not even making movies anymore. Mm-hmm. It seems now. One of the reasons why is because more people just want to watch at home.
Sure. There's new movies, but they're showing up on Netflix and Prime, and you're not going out to see them.
Yeah, they're the studios now. Mm-hmm. Amazon and Netflix, they're making the movies because it feeds directly to the consumer. Right. So wait a second. This has implications now for how people think about worship. Mm-hmm. And there have been some incredible breakthroughs. And we think about what Groeschel has done with Life Church and how they've leveraged technology to have something like 70, 80, 90,000 people in worship and that kind of thing, because he's a master communicator. He's really good. He's a great communicator. But what we're seeing is people are now coming at religion and Christian faith in particular from that very a la carte, very specific, what I like, what I don't.
Absolutely.
And so what that can do is, and let me just tell you, as just a regular guy trying to preach every Sunday, if someone is going to say, hey, I can just watch Groeschel every week and it's better than you, I think they're right. Who can compete with that? And if we think about it from a music perspective, now we have even more variety out there. So I can put together a playlist of exactly what I want to hear. That's music that is my heart language. Then I'm going to find the one or two or three preachers I really like who, today I want to get to the lake a little quicker. So this guy preaches 20 minutes. So we're going to listen to him today. And I've got a little more time today. It's a snowy day outside. So let's listen to this guy's 35 minutes. He's a little more long-winded. Oh my goodness. Now all of a sudden we have every reason in the world, every excuse to not engage in incarnational worship. Now, I say that, again, think about Jesus. Jesus is God in the flesh, so incarnation matters. Being present matters. God thought so. And then he sets up this thing called the church, the body of Christ. And Paul uses the body or somatic metaphor to say that the church needs each of us. Each of us have a part to play in that body. And my concern is that technology is making it possible for big chunks of, quote unquote, the body to be absent. The church is always missing something when you're not there. So that to me is one of the real dangers I see, is that we replace the human touch again with technology. We find ourselves in this false reality. So I don't know. I don't want to be that guy, that's like, oh, it's all bad. But I also am seeing, even here at Ridgecrest, that the expectations are sometimes unrealistic, I think. I hear criticisms of the different ministries we do on a Sunday or a Wednesday. And people here have been very positive. I mean, I don't get a lot of negativity, so I don't want to make it sound that way. But I also know that we're kind of living in an age where it's hard to keep people engaged. We had a conversation in one of our meetings this morning about one particular Sunday school class where it was anecdotal, but the average person in that class is maybe coming once a month.
Oh, okay.
So and they would consider themselves a regular attender by being there once a month.
Yes, and that's what studies through like kids ministry show. A regular attender is now coming once a month.
And, a church like ours, that means there's 300 or 400 or 500 people every week that for some reason are not coming to church. Now, some of them probably are completely not thinking church at all. They're playing golf, going to the lake, maybe. But I wonder how many of them are substituting either our digital stuff or whatever they decide that they're going to plug into. Now, I know at our church, since COVID, we've had anywhere from 80 to 100 people that are kind of watching tuning in. Different ways we've tried to measure it. It's impossible to get a perfect feel for that because people can kind of come in and come out and all that jazz. But pretty consistently, we've seen those numbers. And we've always felt like, how do you count that? And we don't really count it. We put it out there, but we don't put those in our numbers. But it really shows that the game, especially since COVID, has changed. And people are, I think, since COVID, much more willing to let technology, their phones, watching a service on their phone, replace, the trouble it takes to get the kids together. And mom to get ready, and dad's all tired because he was watching a baseball game till midnight last night or whatever it was, and it's not hard to find excuses to not come to church.
No. And I know from times when we've had a sick kiddo at home, or thinking back to the pandemic where we all had to worship at home, we think it's hard for a little one to be able to stay focused in the worship center, but it is really hard for them to stay focused in your home. We would set lawn chairs up in our living room and everyone have a seat because we couldn't focus lounging on the couch. And so they're not focusing when they are at home, tuning in online.
So another thing that you'll see with social media and, being a pastor and having a lot of preacher stuff in my Facebook feed, I'll get these short little 1 or 2 minute video clips from preachers. So a lot of them are guys I've known for years and my work in the convention and that kind of thing. So I know I've been blessed to meet a lot of guys. And so they'll do these little video clips, kind of like their best, 1 minute from a sermon or something like that. We don't do that anymore. Colby's sitting over there. He knows that there was a time when we would try to put those together. We kind of got away from that. It just always felt kind of forced. And, oh, look, I can actually preach or whatever. It just seems self-serving. But here's the problem with that. When that becomes one of the ways that they feel like they're getting fed, then again, attention spans are shrinking and they're only wanting to listen to stuff that's really the A+ stuff. And I've always felt like in preaching, a lot of your sermons are going to be B and C level sermons. Nobody can write A+ all the time. Maybe, and I mean it. I'm not trying to be catty at all. I think of Groeschel and some of the other master communicators that we're blessed with in our culture. And back in the 1800s in England, it would have been, Spurgeon, right? Mm-hmm. There's always those guys that are the top, and it just seems like God speaks to them and through them in powerful ways every week. But the rest of us, we're just regular guys trying to preach the word. And if people come with the expectation that they're going to get like 31 minute, oh my goodness, that was life changing. Mm-hmm. But I think technology makes us think that everything we hear has to be like exactly what I need. Mm-hmm. I remember back in the late 90s, I was pastoring a little church in the middle of Texas. And a lady came up to me and she was just so sad. She was like, I'm just so upset. And she's looking at me and I'm like, what did I do? She said, all of your sermons have just felt like that they were right to me. But today, this one just didn't speak to me at all. The joys of being a pastor. Mm-hmm. And, I think I was able to think, wow, she was being touched. What, maybe 50 times before a dud. Mm-hmm. That's pretty, sure. I got to say, that's not too bad. And what was funny is that sermon, when I thought about it, it was on a subject that was very important to her children. That I think that their children really needed to hear. I can even remember what sermon it was. And I've written a few, that. But, I was kind of shocked because she couldn't even see how that was more applicable to her children. She should have been happy. Mm-hmm. I would think as a parent now, that would have been a topic that was germane to my children. But she was thinking, this is not for me. Okay, again, that's before smartphones.
Sure.
And I think that now that is like on a higher level of problem because people are so used to getting good quality material on a regular basis. So good. We have access now to the best preaching and preachers and teaching in our world today, in English and other languages. The negative is, as a pastor, I can't do that every week.
Sure. And we can't equate our value with the likes or the follows. As a church, we could easily get distracted by watching those things. But that is not where growth is going to happen, both numerically or spiritual growth. It's not going to happen through those.
I can tell you back when we were live streaming on Facebook, I can remember a few times I would go back and I would watch it, and about 1 out of every 20 sermons, I'll go back and watch myself, and it's excruciating. But what was killing me were the frowny faces. And at the time, our communications director, Deb, she was like, "Look, that's probably somebody that's hitting the wrong button because it was coming from just 1 or 2 people,
yes,
and they were misreading the emojis."
Right, but you still just take that personally. Well,
it was so funny. So we started to have this conversation, and we started. Deb and I tried to okay, when you see this emoji, what is that? And so I kept using this one emoji where it's like, where they
yes,
put, that one?
Yep.
Okay, that was one of my favorite emojis. And I said to her, well, to me, that's just being honoring. Mm-hmm. That's just the little honoring.
I feel
emoji.
like it's like, yikes.
Yeah, so that's how you take it. I think Deb she said, that's the face you make when you just spanked your neighbor's child.
Oops.
And I thought, surely that didn't happen in real life. But that just shows you that how much of our worth we're putting into a silly emoji. Mm-hmm. And emojis have become a way, almost, it's so funny. This is maybe worthy of a whole episode. Egyptian hieroglyphics, right? That's a language. Well, emojis are a language now, and there's a whole language there, and there's nuance. And what we need to realize is that's another factor of us. So that's not so much the negative impact on propositional thinking and logic. Now we're talking about an impact on the expression of our emotions. We're depending on emojis to make sure someone understands that either we're happy or we're sad, and then we use an emoji that's a little obscure, and then somebody's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
What does that mean? Mm-hmm. And they could lose an hour worrying. So think about, we haven't talked much about this in this whole thing, but the anxiety that social media and religious technology you're using for religion, it can really bring about some anxiety. And I've been a pastor for 30 years, and I've seen anxious people for 30 plus years. But I really feel like anxiety is a much deeper and more dangerous issue today than ever before. People are just... I'll be in a prayer meeting with someone, happens almost every week, where someone will follow up and say, "Hey, I hope I didn't offend you with what I said." Why are they feeling that way? It's anxiety.
Right.
We are not connecting as human beings enough to know one another well enough. You know, there's no way I can put an emoji on this. Right. There, even an interface between two people can be completely misread. We just don't know how to communicate anymore. So a couple things I was thinking about. I know we've got just a little bit of time here, but I do fear that the use of technology can erode sacredness. That's one of the phrases that I use. I think that church is a sacred space. Now, I don't believe that it's the Holy of Holies. I'm not thinking like Old Testament here.
Sure.
But there is something about God's people being together. Did not Jesus say, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I will be also"? So that right there tells us that the body gathering is sacred because Jesus shows up. When we are platooning, I call it, where we're going one week and another family's going another week to church, and we're only in church maybe 25% of the time, that's 75% of the time that we're missing that sacred moment. So I think that technology has a way of taking us away from the sacred, the depth of relationships. I think God is put in a lower category when we're not together, when we're not worshiping Him as one body. And I think this also, it lifts up and elevates the preacher a little too much sometimes, because again, people will say, "Look, I've had people say, I come into your sermon, but I'm not here for the music." We have people that do that. I see them come in. And I'm not being critical if that's you and you're watching this, but it just kind of shows again that we're so used to a very, very strict subset of I'm going to do this, but not do that. I think that violates the sacred space. I do think it also does erode spiritual authority. I believe that I've bragged on how good Groshel's model is in terms of him being a master teacher. But one of the things I worry about is that when you have a guy and everybody's listening to him, that means every pulpit that they put a video in, someone's not learning how to preach, in that pulpit. Now, maybe not. Maybe they are training when they're preaching at other times. That's fine. But I do worry that we're putting the emphasis on you have to be this like A+ communicator if you're ever going to step in a pulpit. It's not true. God uses preachers of all different skill sets. The most important thing is that they're filled with the Holy Spirit. But if I'm getting most of my church from a video, I'm also probably going to have less respect for a local pastor.
Sure.
So I think there's an erosion there of spiritual authority.
And I wonder how much we're missing God's voice in that. God's voice is often quiet. It's not the distracting, the loud in front of us things that we can, hear speakers and different things through social media. But we have to be in tune. We have to be listening and ready to recognize that. Silence is scary for us. And so we're not even giving ourselves space for that.
One of the things, and I don't know if we can maybe go a little longer on this one because we do need to talk about some healthy application. But one of the things that God laid on my heart is that most of us are carrying an idol around in our pocket. This has become an idol. And we know that's true for us as adults. And then what do we do when our kid is in 5th grade? We say, "Here's your idol. Here you go." And we're putting something in their hand that science is telling us has highly addictive qualities. We're putting something in their pocket that can connect with pornography of all sorts, even if it's just soft at first. It can put them in contact with people who are false teachers and deceptive. And if they're not having conversations with their parents and pastors to help them see those false errors, they don't have the life experience to avoid it. And, in the Old Testament, idols were a big deal. I mean, Israel they were removed from the promised land because of them. And I believe that maybe maybe some of the glory of the Lord departs from us because we've allowed phones and Facebook and social media and technology to become an idol.
Absolutely.
So you have some ideas about maybe some
I have a couple
Sabbath?
challenges maybe.
Yeah, let's do that.
Taking a digital Sabbath, and that's going to look different for every individual or every family who's looking at this, but maybe finding just rhythms of rest that include tech disengagement. I think Sabbath is not just a Sabbath from work, but from distraction. And so how can we put ourselves in positions as a family unit or as an individual that we are allowing us to say, no, I am turning this off. I'm not, tuning in. I'm not checking email. My notifications are turned off, or it's completely turned off and in another room. What would a time of Sabbath look like? Whether that's an evening that you choose, whether it's a whole day, you're spending a day as a family and we're just going to disengage. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's longer. Finding what your family or you as an individual need in that rhythm.
I like that. And here at Ridgecrest, I've been talking with our staff about kind of changing process because a church like ours can get very busy, and busyness sometimes isn't aimed in the right direction. So what we're trying to think through as a staff, as individual, Christ followers and servants of the church, is making the most of our time. But if we say, okay, I'm going to take a break from something, if I say I'm going to change my process and I just leave it at that,
right,
I'm not doing myself a favor because there's a principle in physics: nature abhors a void. The void always will be filled with something. I would say if we're going to try to urge Sabbath from technology, we are intentional up front as parents and as spiritual leaders, and we give viable alternatives up front. We're not going to do the phone. We are going to do whatever that is.
Right. And not having to get caught up because I took this time off and now I'm behind. It's like taking a vacation day off from work. Well, that's great until you come back the next day and you feel like you have more to do. We don't want to fill this spiritual, digital Sabbath and just use that time to get caught up.
Yeah, the whole idea of Sabbath is, I think, even today in the church, we struggle with this so much. We know we need it, but we're not taking enough time to consider what it is. Sabbath isn't vacation. Sabbath isn't just taking a nap. I mean, you can nap on the Sabbath. That's fine. But the idea is it's a holy thing. The Sabbath is holy and something that should be a treasure, something treasured. So if it's a true Sabbath, then what we're replacing the technology time with is something that we ought to treasure. And that would be a relationship. That would be some time spent in prayer, in worship with the family, whatever that may look like.
Right.
So I think with technology, I think we need to accept that it's here, but we also need to anticipate that it's going to cause some problems with our family and be proactive to build in Sabbaths, build in intentionality in terms of relationship, to think of the incarnation of Christ as a model for us to battle technology. The incarnation is the model because it says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us.
Yeah, well, this has been a great conversation. I said from the beginning, very convicting as I'm raising 3 kids myself that don't have smartphones yet, but I know it's coming. And so I think this has been just good to think through years and years and years ago, some predictions and just looking at the effect on this now. So
it's been a great conversation. Thanks, Kayla.
Thank you again for joining us today. We'll see you next time on Hey Listen.